And another thing I'll say is that I think that, for a long time now, film and popular media has sort of just eschewed the idea that virtue is interesting, that virtue on its own can be compelling.
Right.
And frankly, you see that even in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, I think most obviously in Aragorn, but you see it in a lot of characters.
So I was going to bring up that small-mindedness is present in the Peter Jackson
That's right,
films with
but
how he reduces
it's sort of
the
like in a
characters.
nascent way, you know? So whereas in the case of, let's take Aragorn, for example, this is a man who is very virtuous, very noble. I mean, he is the awaited king, but for whatever reason, Peter Jackson and the
it's like they think
writers,
it's not relatable,
it's not interesting
relatable.
enough.
Nobody knows someone that noble, so people are not going to be able to relate to him.
There's like a despair of that being able to carry our interest. What do they do instead? Well, they make him conflicted. So it's like one step on this road, right? Yeah. I mean, he's not sure. He has some self-doubts, but that's still interesting. It's not as interesting.
It's still interesting. Sorry, James. If it is like, I want to say, like, I think it's still interesting, and there is like an actual kind of like journey there. And to me, like that's a good example of kind of this small-mindedness. But for me, the more glaring one from those films is always Faramir. Right. Because Faramir is the only character, he's supposed to be such a contrast to Boromir. Yeah. Boromir's fall, Boromir falls. Faramir doesn't in the books, and they totally just give him the same arc as Boromir, where he messes up, but then he kind of like gets a second chance. And to me, that's the kind of thing where it's like, that was the golden opportunity to really show something.
And it's less interesting. The conflict
it's so much
makes him
less
interesting.
Yes. But part of my point is that that this cancer, this sickness, this despair in our storytelling has like progressed so much so that we're no longer even in that space of like internal conflict and like, I mean, even in the case of Faramir, like we could see that he's like suffering under like what his father thinks of him and all this stuff. Again, I'm not saying it's more interesting than the original, but there is some interest there. Here, like we just have an angry young woman, who's completely self-assured and like a total like killer, but like not even in like an interesting way. There's no conflict here. I mean, inner conflict, she knows what she's about and ain't nobody going to tell her otherwise. Even when she's on that boat heading to the Undying Lands, nobody for a second thinks that she's going to do anything else but jump off this ship. And just because you're telling me, show writers, that, oh no, she has like conflicted side. Does she go off to the Undying Lands or does she go back to fulfill her destiny? Like, I know. Like, there's no question. Like, and she, like you look at her on that ship and you know that she knows. Frankly, like, why did she get on that ship to begin with? There's no like sense of there being any second guessing, except that it's like told you that like, oh, but there is like some depth and nuance here. No, there's not.
You see this with the aspect of the stranger who, we don't know who the stranger is. He comes in on a comet and like, seems to be kind of like a magical guy, Ooh, I wonder who that could be. And he's talking to hobbits, like, who has an affinity for hobbits? Anyway, there's all speculation about whether the stranger is Gandalf or another wizard or whatnot. He's plainly like a wizard of some kind, in my opinion. And it's just so tedious to see, by the end of the third episode, like the show is still holding its cards really closely on this and being like, we're not gonna reveal it yet. We're not gonna. So like they're obviously, and they're working up to this kind of reveal.
The stranger.
Hang on. They're working. They're working.
Have you ever seen Air Bud? Have you seen the movie Air Bud about the basketball playing dog? That's what the stranger is. He's literally learning to talk. Not that Air Bud does that, but you get the idea. It's like literally at the end of episode 3, he suddenly says, friend. And it's like, what is this E.T.?
It's E.T.
Like, this is awful.
Yeah.
So, but like, it's like,
do we really think that wizards, like these angelic, that's how they came into the world, as these like cavemen with like area of effect damage?
Baby Yoda.
It's all this throat clearing. Like, it's like everyone, here's the thing. Everyone, we look at these look at the dwarves, we look at all these characters, all these things. And we're like, man, what we really want, what we really long for is to see them fully actualized and to see them like, you know, growing and being at their height and all that. But the way that modern television now works, everyone, it's like, you can't do any of that in the first season, or you can't even start with some of that already in place. It's basically like we have to kind of crawl through these arcs where eventually we will find out, like eventually the stranger will be able to say more than one word, and like he'll become a hopefully cool, compelling, intelligent character.
Nathan,
but I was going to say
this up in one word: adulting. The phenomenon of adulting, because everybody today is just trying to get to that basic adulting level. Like basically coping and basically living a functional life. Look, and I'm no exception in many ways, but like people don't know what it is to be like a virtuous, like basic baseline, like functional human being, and then like go do something from there.
Right.
So everything is just about like your pathologies and like, you know what I mean?
What I wish the show was, and this is maybe not being fair to it, because like, you know, you shouldn't critique something for what it isn't, but necessarily, but try to meet it, you know, what it's doing. But all this is making me think about the films of Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks, classic Hollywood era director. His films they're very famous. They become more famous, particularly for this aspect of what, it was probably Tarantino who coined it, but somebody, you know, coined the term of hangout cinema. So basically this idea that the pleasure of a Howard Hawks film like Rio Bravo, or even The Big Sleep, which The Big Sleep is notorious for having a mystery that's like incomprehensible. But the pleasure of The Big Sleep is that you get to hang out with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall at the height of their chemistry. They have they have a great script, but a lot of it, you know, you can sort of see just like the tanginess and just it's just so much fun to be with these two, even if nothing's happening. You know, Rio Bravo is like that. You're hanging out with all these cowboys, and they're just chilling until like the plot kicks in like an hour in, and so. The thing is that a major thing about Howard Hawks is like you see, especially amongst his films are usually about men. You see often a Hawksian character. You have your like protagonist, your antagonist, or they don't fit neatly along those lines. But there's always this process of like respect, and like they come fully formed, or like, you know, they come basically like at a certain level of formation, of human formation, where it's like, this guy's really capable, this guy's really capable. And then like when you see those two characters like see that in each other, and a friendship starts to form. And then the film is actually about like how that friendship is tested, or about how like maybe they get better at it or something. But so they have place to go, they have room to grow. But the film starts at this really fascinating point where it just kind of is like, yeah, we're already like at a good place, and that's like we can't do that anymore. You know, like we have to start basically at like zero level.
I would say that this is a video gamification of our storytelling, because it's like you start at level 1 and you don't have any items, you don't have any equipment, and you got to go out there and like find the master sword, and
you have to grind for
like
30 hours.
You got to grind, and like Outcast. That's what the television shows are doing to us. They're forcing us to go through this grind for the payoff, and I hate that that after watching the first 2 episodes, the only thing that's keeping me interested is what's in the dwarf box and who is this space.
Wait, there's a dwarf box? I must have like not even paid attention.
Dude, there's a point at which like Dwarf King and Prince Durin, like they go and they open a box, and it's like, whoa, what's in there? It shines.
It's obviously Anyway,
I don't know, but like I don't like this sort of this contrived like withholding of information so that you can keep me like interested.
It's like
the most pathetic like baseline mediocre way of keeping me interested. It's like, hey, guess what? Guess what? Like that's it. That's it. You know, that's it.
I just want to say one thing about the game thing, which is like it reminds me of the Jedi games, the Jedi Knight games, where
Jedi Outcast, because you don't get your lightsaber.
Particularly Jedi Outcast,
which is actually awesome in that context.
It's a cool idea, but it
works in video games. It works in video games.
No, it doesn't. I was
the fundamental mechanic is fun.
Jedi Outcast is way more fun if you just cheat and get your lightsaber away and carve through stormtroopers. But basically, it's anyway. Blah, blah.
So, great way to finish the sentence. That'll be easy to edit. So,